need to have a flow action. Okay, if in case of screen flow, you can see that flow action appears on double click of the assignment shape. If in case of process flow, you can see that appears on the connector coming out of the assignment. Okay, so there you will configure the flow action in case of process flow. So in case of screen flow, you can see on opening the assignment sheet. So this is a flow action where each and every flow action requires a section. Okay, so this is a mandatory rule for a flow action to configure. So to configure a flow action, in order to appear a screen to the user, so you need a section where you will add the things what you need to display to the end user. Okay, so whatever the things that you need to display, whatever the things that you need to take input, that is something we configure in a section, which is a front end. So in Pega, the front end portion is covered with a rule called sections. Okay, so section comprises of the controls that you want to display to the end user. It contains the controls, and each and every control is a field which is associated to a rule called property rule. So already we discussed about this in our previous session. So each and every property is nothing but a variable to store a value. So the input, we are capturing it. So that input is copied into, set into a variable, and that variable in Pega we call it as a property. Okay, so the fields that we create, it's a property rule, and each and every control which will associated to a property. Right, so now if whenever you create a section, so you need to have certain controls that you need to place, and each and every control should have type that belongs to which type of input that you take. So here you can see the text input is the format given for the first name. So first name which we are taking the input, it is taking the type as text input. So it's a input text field. Okay, so you can see there are different type of controls available for us to, you can change the control which you have used it. Okay, so the data capture controls that you can see the controls of pickers, you can see the controls of action, data display, and there are a few other custom options as well. So the data capture controls that you can see, the text input is one such one, which is taking the single text input. Okay, if you say text area, it is basically a area which you can see as a multiple lines where you can capture the address. Okay, so something like address, if it is there, then you can use the text area control. Okay, similarly, if you want to capture a date, then you will see date time control. If you want to capture the integer, there's a numerics of numbers. If you want to take the input as a number, then you will choose the integer type. If you want to take the decimal values, you can see this option is available. If you want to take the input in the format of a currency, okay, so that is something we can choose this format. So based on the control that you choose, there are certain other presentation options that gets updated based on the type of input. Okay, so based on the type of input that you have taken, based on the input type which you have chosen, so there are certain other presentation options that appears with respect to the type that you have chosen. Okay, so here you can see there are certain currency symbols that we can specify. So you can specify the currency symbol, or you can specify the currency code, something like USD, and you can say currency name as well. Okay, any questions?
No, this makes
No.
sense.
Yeah,
For
it
taking
makes
the
sense.
data, yeah.
Okay, can you be on mute, please, Mohidan Baji? Okay. All right, so we can choose certain presentation options that will help us to define and visible for the end users the presentations that you are using it. Okay, so it will append something like US dollars post the text input. Okay, so after your text input is taken into consideration, so it will add this particular thing. Okay, so US dollars are taken into consideration. So these presentation options will help us in defining the input type which you are taken, so there are other presentation options based on the type that you choose it. Okay, so here there are certain different options available in case of the currency option which is chosen. So you can see there are different options available. Okay, so if you doesn't want to display the currency, you can just go for a constant and nothing you can specify over here. Okay, or else you can specify via a reference. So basically the reference is nothing but the property. Okay, so something dynamically you want to set a variable and that variable you want to present it. Okay, so that is something you can specify by using the reference options. Okay, so when you're specifying a reference, it will take some variable, and in case of Pega it is a property. So that property value which is there, so that appears automatically instead of US dollars, it comes dynamically whatever the property is having certain value. Okay, so that way certain places you can see the reference options available. So the reference is nothing but a property. Okay, so that property name you have to specify in this text control. Okay, so whenever you see the reference, it is not something like it is referring some variable which is coming dynamically. Okay, so that is something we need to define before you are coming to this screen. All right, so this references always you need to start with a dot notation. So because it is a property, you want to specify some variable, something like currency symbol or currency name. So this currency name is some property value where it should come dynamically. So we need to set this currency name prior to coming to this screen, and this currency name will automatically populate whatever you set it. Okay, so this is something dynamically referred value. All right, so this way we can help us to derive certain properties, and we can define before you are coming to this screen. For example, there is a property that I am creating right now with a name called currency name is the name of the property. So I'm defining this variable. Okay, and now I am, let's take this as text itself and save it. Okay, and now coming to this, so here I'm taking a new control instead of changing the existing controls. So let's make it as text input itself. Let's take a new control. So let's add a field here. Currency. Okay, and here I'm not associating any property here in this scenario. I'm just associating a reference while we are displaying the value. Okay, so I'm just specifying the reference value, how it has to display. All right, so for that I'm using the currency options in the read-only format. Okay, so here I'm specifying this as a reference, and here I'm specifying the currency name. Okay, so I'm defining this currency name which should come dynamically. Now how do I set this currency name? Okay, I will make this as read only, but I need to enter certain input. So for that I will take the input as expected salary. Okay, so I'm taking the expected salary as one of the variable. Okay, so I'm taking this expected salary is one of the property created in the same class. Okay, and I can use this expected salary here. I can specify the label as how you want to display for the end user. Okay, so I'm just giving expected space salary in the label value. So whatever you specify under the label value, that comes on top of the field. Okay, so here you can see here I'm getting it. Now the symbol is placeholder here. Okay, because the value should be coming dynamically. All right, now I'm making this as read only because the presentation options which I have chosen, which is being defined here, is read only. For the read only formats, how I need to define it, this particular setting is applicable for the read only format. Okay, so here, of course, this can be an editable format as well because I have selected this option as well. So whatever the format which is selected for the read only, it is applicable for the editable format as well. So for both of these two, I can use the same format which is defined for the read only. It is being taken care here as well. All right, so let's go with this. Now save it. Now I need to have this reference. When I'm saying reference, so reference is nothing but a property which should come dynamically. So this currency name should be coming dynamically. All right. Now where I need to define this, I have multiple places where I can define this initiation. Okay. So here, before you are coming to this screen, I have the flow. Okay, so in the flow you have the connectors, right? So there in this connector, if I open the connector, not here, the process flow, it is available. Let's go to this create, and here under the actions tab you have something called as pre-processing. Okay, so flow action is basically whatever the actions that we define it, it will remain in the flow action. Okay, so you have two options available under the action tab. One is pre-processing, the other one is post-processing. Okay, so pre-processing will define certain rules before you are coming to this section, before you are coming to this screen, what logic you need to apply. So that will be called via a rule called data transform or a rule called activity. Okay, so you have certain rules which will perform certain logics. Okay, so in order to define certain logics, you can utilize any of the rules which are specified under the pre-processing, and on click of next, okay, what has to happen, that will be called post-processing. Okay, so that means whenever you are creating a new case, before you are coming to this screen, this logics will be called out, pre-processing logics will be called out. Okay, and on click of continue, the post-processing logics will be called out. So here whatever you define under the post-processing, it will be triggered as and when you click on continue. Okay, so for now let's use the pre-processing thing, because when you are coming to this initial screen where I need to define this expected salary and I want to dynamically define the currency name. Okay, so that currency name I can define it dynamically, and that logic I can incorporate via a data transform rule. For now I'm using a data transform rule to initialize a variable. Okay, so here I'm specifying the name of the rule init, initialization of create form. So I'm defining a rule called init create form, and this is basically I'm going to create a new rule called a data transform rule. Okay, so this data transform rule will help us to write down certain logics, and these logic will be executed before you are coming to that screen. Okay, now that I have executed it, I'm creating this data transform rule. Okay, so the name itself says that transformation of data. So data, any kind of transformation that you can do it. Okay, so something like in Java you have a initialization stage. Okay, sorry, constructor where you can initialize it. Okay, so that constructor is something we can utilize for this pre-processing thing. Okay, so now click on create and open. It is going to create a rule for you. In this rule, I want to initialize a variable. So for this I can use this action set. Okay, I have so many actions to perform, so out of this I'm going to define an action set where I can specify the property name which I want to refer dynamically, currency name. Okay, so here I'm specifying as yen, or I can specify INR. So here I am specifying the currency name, okay, so that it will come dynamically. So this currency name will populate on my text control here. Before you are entering it, I can define. Okay, so here I can define this currency name, and this currency name can be coming automatically. Okay, so this data transform, where exactly it is getting called, I need to save this particular rule as well, because I'm calling this data transform here. So this data transform, once you refer it, and you need to save it. Okay, so what happens as and when you are calling this flow action, so this flow action will be triggered whenever you're creating a flow for the first time, when you are coming to this collect information. Okay, so every time whenever it is coming to the screen, it will be called. Okay, so let's say if I continue and if I come back again to the same screen, it will again still call that. Why? Because every time whenever you are visiting the screen, it will be auto populated. Okay, so here as and when I click on continue, and if I come back again, so as and when I'm coming back again, the pre-processing data transform will be called. Okay, so this data transform should be called, and here it should get that value which is referred in this. Let me see here. Create form is correct, and let me create a new one. Now, what did I save this one? Save, right. Presentations. All right, so let me try once again. So here we need to have a currency property. So let's go back to the old way of doing, so which is convert to full section editor. Will bring back the original Pega 7 format. So basically, this is going to have certain in the background. This is the how it is generated. Okay, so whatever the design template that you see, it is the Pega 8 generated templates. Okay, whereas in the older 7 version, you can see this is how it is generated. Okay, so basically, this is using HTML5, and in this HTML5, you have certain dynamic layouts. Okay, so all the things, whatever the controls that you are placing it, it is coming inside. You need to place inside the dynamic layout. So the controls which you are copying and dragging and dropping it. So you can see the controls are appearing over here. You can see the data capture controls, pickers controls, action controls, and data display controls. Okay, so these are the categories where the different type of inputs that we take it. So those are categorized in these type of things. Okay, so here when you drag and drop certain things, you have this option to select a property over here. So you can specify the name of the property which where the exact value will be stored. So once you take the input, so this is the property where it captures the value. And then under the presentation, you can display how you want to display the presentations things. Okay, so ideally it should be coming with a local currency and other currencies which are defined. So I can specify the currency name which should be initiated. Okay, so anyway, I will tell you the debugging mechanism where I can debug and see why it is not coming. But here you can specify the different type of options. First, let's see the simple one. Let's say if I want to display the dollars. Okay, so here you can simply go and select the particular option where it will display the currency symbol or in this code. Okay, so currency code or the currency name, so that will be appearing by default over here. All right, so this is one way of representing how you are going to display it. So this presentation options will differ based on the type that you choose it. If in case you are going with the currency type, the presentation options are in this way. Whereas if you go for a text control or a date time control, you will see the other presentation options appears. Okay, so where the input that you will choose it, it will take in the format that you choose it. Okay, so let's say if you want to display the date of birth. Okay, so in the format of a date time, and here you have different options available, like you can choose via a drop down list. Okay, and if you are choosing the drop down list, the date you have to pick it up from the in this way. So you have date in the DD, YY, which is in the format of the drop downs. Okay, so this is something like a drop down list which is being populated for the date which you want to choose it. Okay, so this is something easy because the text input calendar is given and you can select the calendar. Okay, so in case of date of birth, most of the forms that you see, it doesn't need to enter the time. Okay, so you can just go with a simple date. So you can select only the date, even though the control has date and date time. It is the one where you can restrict to a date. Okay, the input that you want to take only the date format. So that is something you have that option to select only a particular date. All right, so this way the date of birth, the date options that you can choose it, and the presentation options will also show you the format how you want to display it. Okay, so you have different formats available where you want to apply the way that it represents, so you can use the different options are appearing here. Okay, so if you want to display something in this format, you can always choose the way how it is to be. And this is something you can specify in the read-only format how it has to appear. So you can choose the appropriate date and then you can choose how you want to display. Okay, so this is something for the read-only format. Similarly, for the editable purpose, you can also specify certain settings. Okay, so here by default, you can customize the things. Okay, so here the width of the space. So in the customization, in the sense the width which is given, the date of birth width which is given, you can minimize it. You may not require 100%, you may cut short to 50%. Okay, and similarly you can specify the date ranges as well. Okay, so right now the date range which is given is last 10 years only. Okay, so the date of birth you can choose only till the last 10 years. Okay, so you can see here post 2013, even if I'm clicking down arrow, it is not working because this is limited. The range of this date to capture is only till the last 10 years. Okay, so this is something like a presentation options you need to validate it. Okay, so if that options are not coming, so you need to just see how much range is given for the last 10 years and the next 10 years. Okay, so maybe next 10 years you may not require. Okay, you want to select only the below date. Okay, so obviously then you may display something like 50. So last 50 years you are eligible to display. Okay, so in this way you can select that appropriate range how you want to display. All right, I'm selecting this option. Let's see, display value using read-only formatting, and this format is this format. Okay, 01 Jan 2001. Let's try this. Continue, back. Okay, so you can see here the format is in this way. All right, so here you can select now the range below 13 as well. Okay, so in this way there are different presentation options how you want to control that control which you have taken. So that is something, it is up to you. Okay, so similarly you might have this address field which is again the rich text editor. So where you can see the bold, italic, underline, and there are a few more options coming in. So this is a control called rich text editor where you have the editing options available by selecting certain things. Okay, so if you want to include few more controls like copy paste, undo, spell check, and full screen. So you can utilize these options selected as well. Okay, so the more the number of options that you choose, the text editor will become bigger. Okay, so all of these options will be embedded over here. Okay, so here you can see there are so many options are coming for you. Okay, so this way we can customize based on the requirement. Okay, so how you want to display the controls, so you have the lot of customization options available to you, where you can utilize them to how you want to display. Okay, so the presentation options will change according to that. And under the actions you have few action sets that you can use it. So as and when you select it, what you need to do it. Okay, so certain action set you can define, where you can have an options like click, double click, hover, right click, enter keyboard events, and the other events. So on click, what you need to do it, so that is something you can define it. So on click, you want to perform some actions. So there are certain actions that you can utilize it. So these are some of the common performed actions, whereas you can see all actions, where you can see there are other actions that you can use over here. Okay, so this way we can update the actions how you want to what you need to do it on click of it. Okay, so as and when you are coming to the text editor and you are clicking inside this, so that action which you have configured, it will automatically execute. Okay, so whenever you're coming to this rich text and you are clicking, so it should automatically call the action which you are doing it. So let's say if I'm doing the common performed action called refresh, so what happens? It will refresh this section. So the section will be refreshed as and when you click on it. Okay, so here, let's see. So in order to see that change, you just need to refresh the screen. So for that, I'm going continue and coming back again, so that the screen will refresh once. Okay, so here, as and when you click on it, it is refreshing it. Okay, so it is taking. Okay, so it is getting refreshed. Okay, so the change is something like on click of it, it is automatically getting refreshed. Okay, so we are not able to see this immediately, but it's getting refreshed. Let's take for some other event. Let's take create an action set for this, and just for changing this. Okay, so as and when I change the date of birth, I can say a refresh. Okay, and submit. Save it. So let's refresh here. Okay, so as and when I change this, so you can see the refresh is happening over here. Okay, so this is something whenever we are changing it, it is getting refreshed. Okay, so this is not registered for the click event, I think. Okay, it is not getting refreshed, I think. Okay, it is. Refresh is not registered, I think. So basically, if in case the event is, if it is registered, so you can see this event, the clickable event, is not applicable for this rich text editor. So if it is, then you can see that refresh should happen. Okay, so that way basically you can configure the action events, and based on that action event, whenever it happens, it will call the subsequent action. Okay, so whatever action that we have configured in it, so that action will be performed. All right, so that is how it is defined. Okay, so the actions for each and every control we can define it. Okay, so that actions, based on that action, it will perform. Is it clear?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So is that a rule that the refresh doesn't apply to that cell?
Let's see the on change event, probably instead of on click event. I think on change of some value, it might refresh, because ideally it is not correct also, because for every click it's not correct. It's not, can't be, because how can it know that it is changing or not because this is something like a control. Whenever it is changing, it is a control, right? So it is a pop-up is coming and it is closing, so there is an action event which is registered. That means it is system code able to know that the pop-up is closing. So whenever the pop-up is getting closed, it has that option to refresh. Let's register with a keyboard events instead of this. Okay, so let's take a keyboard event as escape key, or let's say tab key. Okay, let me try this. Okay, so as and when I come over here and I click on tab, not sure.
Did you save maybe the record?
Actually, okay, fine. Don't waste the time. But the registered, I mean, the event once you perform certain action event, it has whatever the action that you configure, it should perform that action. All right. So now, once you add the control, the properties that you add over here, these properties will be, or these variables will be automatically saved in our database. Now, which database it will be saved? The class which is mapped to that table. Okay, so every class will be associated to a table as and when it is a concrete class. Okay, so whenever the class which you define, the case type is defined, it is creating a concrete class type for you. Okay, so this concrete class type is associated to a table which you can see. This is a table which is associated. Okay, so this table will have those instances which are created. So each and every case, whenever you create it, so all these cases, so R10012, okay, so right from the first case till the last case, whatever cases which are created, all these cases are saved in our data table. Okay, so we doesn't have access to the data table straight away. Okay, so we can use the tool to utilize how whatever the instances which are available in the database, I can just see by clicking on this. I can just click on the class, so automatically the instances which are available in the database I can see over here. Okay, I can open any of the case and I can verify the case status also. So this way, the database, whatever the data table, whatever the cases which are created, so you can see those cases appears over here. Okay, so this is just you need to click on the class, it will come with all the instances. Okay, so you can also right click on it, view instances. You can go via this option as well. So both of these two are same. So you are verifying the instances which are saved automatically. Okay, so once you're creating a case and once it is navigating throughout each and every process involved, so it is automatically saving the input which is given. You are not explicitly doing it, so Pega is taking care of doing the save logics. Okay, so saving is also automatically getting done. So once you are completed this screen, okay, so once you are entering certain date of birth, all right, so this case, and if I give some salary expected, oh, I think this value is coming actually. So here you can see the value is automatically getting populated earlier, which I'm giving a demonstration. Right, so this one expected salary which I have entered, so here under the presentation, yeah, so I have specified the currency name coming in INR, right? So here I have initialized to INR. Okay, so that is the reason I'm getting here automatically INR. Okay, so if I have given something like USD or AUD, okay, Australian dollar, now save it. So what happens now? It will automatically populate the AUD. So when it will populate, before again it has to refresh, right? So you need to continue and come back to that screen again. Okay, so here once I refresh it so that it will reload it. Okay, and now I will enter some value. 20,000 AUD. So you can see this AUD is populating now dynamically. Okay. So this value, the currency name value, which you are initializing by the time of you are coming to this action, flow action. Okay. So every time, whenever you are visiting that assignment, what happens? This pre-processing logics will be called first. Okay, so the pre-processing logic, whatever the data transform which is there in it, so this data transform, it is called, and inside this data transform, the variable is initialized. The currency name property is initialized to AUD. And what we are doing in the section, we are dynamically referencing here by using the option currency reference. Okay, so I can use this reference also. Ideally, this should also be working fine. Okay, so let's try this. Okay, so this is something is working. Okay, so automatically this is populating the currency name which is coming dynamically. So this way you can add the currency which is coming dynamically based on your requirement. Okay, so you can use this similar way, the currency type that you may choose it above, and you can display the currency dynamically coming over here. Can we do this exercise? So I will have one drop down here, where in that drop down, I'm going to display the currency type. Okay, so the name of the currency I will select from there, and it should automatically come over here. It could be INR, it could be US dollars, or it could be Australian dollars. Okay, so that exercise, let's try it. Okay, so now let's take one pickers. Okay, so I'm going to have one drop down where I will select the currency name. Okay, so I'm going to define a currency name coming dynamically. Okay, so here I'm specifying the currency name, and now this currency name, it is a drop down, right? So whenever you are using a drop down, there is something called as a list source. So what are the values that you need to display in a drop down? That values we need to get somewhere, so that is something we call it as a source. So from where you are getting the values, so in the drop down you need to display certain values in it. So there is some options available, like defined on a property, data page, clipboard page, report definitions. Okay, so there are certain options available right now. The easiest option that you have is defined on a property. On a variable itself you can define the what kind of values it can be. Now I'm going to open this currency name property. Okay, and you have something called as a table type. Okay, so this table type is going to define certain list of values that you need to populate in the drop down. So for that you have multiple options available. So I can use this something like a local list, where you can define the list of values. Okay, so list of values where I can define AUD, INR, USD. Okay, so in this way we can define certain values. All right, so now I'm just displaying three values in the drop down. So this is something, a local list which is defined, and wherever I'm utilizing this drop down, I'm specifying the list source as defined on a property. So already I have defined on the property, so it should get those three values which are defined on that property. Okay, so this currency name, as and when I'm selecting it, what should happen? It should come in the expected salary. Okay, it should come automatically on the expected salary. So for that, what I need to do is, as and when I select it, okay, so as and when I change or select it, okay, so I need to refresh it. I need to refresh the section. So whole section I'm refreshing it, so that it will populate the value. Okay, so maybe initial value should be empty. So for that I can have one empty record, maybe, because I'm keeping as on change. Okay, so here I'm going to set the initial value as blank. Okay, so initial value can be kept as blank. Okay, so for that let's take select option here. Okay, something like this. Save it. Now you can come back to the place where you want to display this, continue and come back. Okay, now you see the currency name is populating as AUD, let's say here, and I'm going to set as INR, so it should automatically come with INR. USD, it should be coming as USD. So in this way, I'm updating the value which is selected from this drop down. Okay, so this way the action events as well as the change events, we can configure it and the values can be coming dynamically as well. Are we good?
Yeah,
Yeah, all
can
good.
you go over again how the two are linked, like the currency name
So,
field and the expected salary?
so what I'm doing is this create section is having a control where I'm capturing the value from a drop down. Okay, so the value which I'm selecting from this drop down, where it is getting saved in the property called currency name. Okay, so here the value which I'm selecting, okay, so the values which are coming from this particular table, so assume like this is a table, okay, a small table which is populating, which are associated for this property. Okay, so as and when we are selecting it, it is getting stored with the currency name which you have selected it. Okay, so once you are selecting it, it is there in the property called currency name. Okay, so in here, assume that you are setting a value to this. Currency name is a variable. Okay, so here I am once I am selecting the value from the drop down. Let's say I have selected INR from the drop down. Now the property currency name will have the value as INR. Okay, whereas the below drop down says that below text which is used as a currency to display. So the currency name which is coming, it is dynamically here. Okay, so the currency name I'm populating dynamically. So this is something like a reference which I'm calling a property. This is a variable. You can see dot as well. Okay, so dot is also there. The currency name is also there. It is the same currency name what you have selected above. Okay, so the names here you can see both are matching. So the properties are matching, the variables are matching here. Okay, so now this currency name is something coming, the one which you have selected above. Okay, so that way we are linking the above one, whatever you have selected it, so that should come before here. So this is how it is displayed. So by default, without reference, if I specify the currency, okay, and if I specify the local currency, which is the USD, what happens? Always it remains the USD here. Okay, so always it will come with the US dollars and that will represent the value. Okay, so in case of this value, if you see without giving the dynamic way of calling, I'm just giving this a constant which is the US dollars. So here it is always USD dollars. Okay, so whatever the value that you choose, so here it is always USD dollars itself. Okay, so because how it is coming this USD value here, this USD value is coming because of the configuration that you did in the presentation. This is the configuration is responsible to display the value. This configuration, the currency, local currency, this value. Okay, so this configuration is responsible to display that USD value there. But now what I'm doing is I'm just referencing dynamically with the help of a currency name property. Okay, and this currency name keeps on changing based on the drop down selection. Okay, so this keeps on changing the value as and when you select from the drop down. Okay, so that is the reason as and when I'm changing this value, I'm asking the system to refresh it. That is the reason I configured this action set. I kept a on change event and here I am refreshing the section. Okay, so this way it is refreshing the section to update the value where the currency name is getting there. Okay, I hope you understood this time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, so this way we can refer any variable, any property where you are referencing it. Even if you keep the currency name somewhere below, it will automatically come. Okay, so it is something like a property where exactly you are using it. Okay, so wherever you use that property, it will automatically come. Let's say there is a first name, or yeah, let's say there is a first name. Okay, so I want to default initialize this first name. So this is basically a property, right? So wherever I want to initialize this first name with some xyz values, okay, so that you can do it. So where you can do, again, in the flow action, in the pre-processing data transform, if you are initializing this property as well, okay, so if you, whenever you are initializing a variable, you always need to specify a dot followed by the name of the property. Okay, so if I specify the first name, I can specify, let's say Raviraj. I'm doing the hard coding. Okay, so I'm just giving a static value to this first name property. So here I'm defining this Raviraj. So what happens is, as and when I come to this screen, this will auto populate me the Raviraj. Okay, even if I remove it, if I continue and come back again to the same screen, what happens? This will automatically populate this name because this is getting triggered. Okay, so this logic is getting triggered as and when I'm coming to this screen. What happens? This is the flow action getting triggered, and in this flow action you have an action tab where the pre-processing will be called always. So as and when the pre-processing is getting called, this will be called, and whenever it is getting called, whatever the logic present in this, it will be initialized. Okay, so even if I have removed from there, it is still auto populated with the value which I have initialized over here. Okay, so this way we can initialize the values which how you want to. Okay, so the system flow action is designed in such a way, the actions tab will help us to define the pre-processing things before coming the screen, what kind of logic it has to execute. That means whenever you are coming to this screen, whenever the screen is loading, before that itself this logic will be called, this logic will be executed. Okay, and on click of continue, the post processing logic will be called. So the post processing logic is, on click of continue, we can see the post processing logic will be triggered. All right, so that post processing logic will be something defined over the post processing. Okay, so that means on click of continue, there is another data transform that you can specify, or you can call an activity. So this will be triggered on click of continue. So that is the difference between pre-processing and post-processing, where you have certain logic-based rules called data transform and activities, where you will actually perform certain logics. Okay. So as of now, I have just shown you the basic operation called set. So set is basically the initialization of variable, initializing a variable, a property. Okay. Now coming back to the sections. Okay. So basically, the controls that you have it, all these controls you are placing inside a dynamic layout. Okay, so dynamic layout is basically kind of a div tag. Okay, so in HTML, if you remember, there is something like a div tags, input tags, and everything, right? So these controls are placed in the div tag. Okay, and this dynamic layout is responsible to make the screen responsive. So dynamic layouts are the ones which is responsible to make the screens responsive. So here, what is meant by responsive? Responsive is basically the space that you have, it will utilize the whole space. Okay, so dynamic layouts strength is to use the space how much you have it. Okay, so if let's say if I remove this particular, if I collapse this left side panel, so what happens? It is consuming the whole space, and now you can see it is not leaving the space empty. It is still utilizing the whole space. So given the space is minimized, it will automatically adjust how you want, how much space it is given. Okay, so if I will take this screen something like a tab format, so you can see the controls are still displaying for you in a smaller way. Okay, so there is no horizontal scroll bars appearing for you. So there is no horizontal, only the vertical scroll bar is coming for you. Okay, so basically this is called a screen responsiveness. The screen which you develop, it is applicable for mobile, iPads, and the browsers which is bigger, the laptops which are bigger, and the desktops as well. Okay, so based on the screen resolution, it is going to change the things automatically. Okay, so it will make it cleaner, not to have a distorted way of displaying the UI. Okay, so the UI is coming with a responsiveness. This is how it is, the responsive screen, which is coming with the help of dynamic layouts. Okay, so these dynamic layouts are the ones which are responsible. Once you develop a section, it is applicable for all the gadgets. Okay, so it is applicable for mobile gadgets, iPad, and all the browsers. Okay, so that is the reason the controls are always placed inside a dynamic layout. Okay, so in this dynamic layout, you have certain options available. If you click on this view properties, so you can see as and when you select it, so you can see this view properties icon, where you can see certain other options available for us. All right, so in the dynamic layout properties, you have something called as under the general tab, you have certain layout formats. Okay, so these layout formats will define how much screen that you want to divide it. So the screen which is given, the space which is given to you, how you want to divide it. Okay, so this layout format, they have certain formats available where we can choose the different formats. Okay, so let's say if I use this inline grid triple, what happens is the space is divided into three columns, 1, 2, and 3. Okay, so this space which is there, it is dividing the controls to be placed in three divided partitions. Okay, so the partitions are divided into three. That is the reason the format which you have chosen, it will give you the different look for the users. Okay, if I use only the inline, it will be in a different format. So it will use directly placing the things one after another. It is not a dividing the partitions in a uh, it is not dividing in a let's say 100% of the screen is there, not 33, 33, 33. It is not divided equally. It is something divided in a unpartitioned way. Okay, it can be 10, it can be 20, in that way. Okay, so that way how much space it is there, how many controls are there, for that it is taking, let's say, a 10 percentage. For this, the bigger controls, maybe the 20 percentage. Okay, so inline is doesn't have any specific format, it just keeps on adding one after another. Okay, so it's a just keeping the controls one after another inside that, in case of inline. Okay, so similarly if you go for stack, it is going to place one after another. That means these are placed one after another. So and this is how the different formats which are given, you can even use the other formats which are specified under the other options, where you can click on down arrow and you can see the other options which are available. Okay, so you can use this something like a simple list. Here you cannot see the difference. Let me go back to the other ones. Line grid double only I'm keeping here. For this one, let's see. Okay, so let's take layout format as simple list with labels on the left hand side. So now you see the labels are displaying above, right? So the labels are displaying above the control. Okay, so whereas the option that is there, simple list with labels on the left, so you can see this way, first name is coming on the left and the control is coming on the right side. So this way there are different formats are available. We can use the most suitable format how you would like to display for your end users. Okay, for your application, how your end users want to. So in that way you can use the appropriate layout format. Okay, now coming to the container format. So container formats are basically the background how you want to appear. Okay, so the background of the layout, the background that you see, like first name, date of birth, email, currency name, expected salary. So for this particular layout, whatever the background that you want to choose, so that is something you can update with the help of container format. So I can use something like a default container format, and I can see it is coming in the white color. So you can see the difference between these two. The default container format is having the white color background, whereas the one which is none, the container format as none, it is coming in the gray color background. Okay, so in addition to that, you can have few more options available under the other options. So container format is responsible to display the background color or how you want to display. Okay, so let's say notifications is the background format which I want to use it. You can see something like this. Okay, so this is up to us how you want to define this format. So this container format will give us the background color how you want to display. All right, so let's keep it the same for both of these two, and let's take the layout format also same. Simple as like this. All right. Okay, so this way we have the dynamic layouts provided for the responsiveness screens and the layout formats which for the how you want to divide the controls which are placed inside a dynamic layout, and the container formats where you can define the background things. Okay, any questions here?
No.
All right.
No, everything's
Now,
clear.
all right, good. Now let's say I'm telling you that the system is automatically saving the data, but how do you ensure the data is getting saved or not? Of course, you can open from the class instances by clicking on the class name, and you can open it, but some may not be appearing to you on the foreground, right? So some may be hidden in the background. So certain things which you may not be appearing all of them in the screen. So how do you visualize certain things? Okay, so for that we are going to use this tool called clipboard. Okay, so clipboard is one such tool which helps you to understand the case which you are open, which you have opened it, whatever the details which are available, which are saved in the database. So to validate, to verify that information, you can use this tool called clipboard. Okay, so clipboard is a tool where you can validate the things which are available in the database for that particular case. Okay, so I can use this clipboard where it comes in the top pop-up window, and here in the clipboard you can see there is something called as thread. Okay, so I need to choose a particular thread where this information is available. So you can see the link which is appearing, so it has certain threads, so these are called as threads. Okay, so every tab that you open over here, every tab is basically a thread. Okay, so you can close all, so that it will close all the threads from here as well. Okay, so if you refresh this, now you can see the threads are closed. Okay, so the each and every tab that you open, it is going to have the each and every thread created for you. Okay, so here also you can see, let's say if I want to see this R10014 case, the information whether it is saved or not, you can just go to the clipboard from here as well. You have the icon appearing here. So you just remember that this is a symbol representing the clipboard debugging tool. So clipboard is one of the debugging tool that helps you to understand whether that information, whether that properties are stored appropriately for this case or not. Okay, so I'm opening this case, so I have to see the thread which is belonging to that case. Okay, so I have to choose that particular thread which is belonging to that case. So I have selected the case id which is opened in the portal. Okay, so once I open, so these are something called as pages. So you can see the clipboard comprises of the pages. Okay, so out of these pages, okay, so all of these are called as the pages. What is meant by page, I will tell you. So basically page is nothing but an instance of a class. Okay, so just like object, okay, so in Java you call it as an object. So the page is a instance of a class. Okay, so page is an instance of a class. All right, so the now this page which you see, this is just, you can also call it as an object. Okay, so you can correlate with the object as it is. Okay, page is nothing but an object. Okay, so when you are defining an object, you know object comprises of a state and a behavior. Okay, so object comprises of certain variables to define an object. Okay, object is long, object is short, object is in a red color. Okay, so there are certain features, that are variables to define an object. So in the similarly we have the properties to define a page. Okay, to define a page we have a properties. All right, and similarly you have a behavior. Okay, so you can define the behavior of an object as well. So that is something we combine to have a functions. Okay, so page is also a collection of properties. A page will be comprising of collection of properties. All right, so it comprises of the values, the properties and the values, the property names and the values. So it is an instance which is getting stored as an object in the data table. Okay, so that instance, if we are opening it, so that is something we are getting in the format of a page. Okay, so page is the one where it has the list of properties which can be shown. Okay, so every page that we create, it will comprise of the properties belonging to that class. Okay, so let's say if I have a class, if I have a class address. Okay, so in this address class, what you will define? Address line 1, maybe a string. Okay, similarly we have the string city. Okay, string state. Okay, string pin code. Okay, so this way we are defining certain variables. All right, to define the class object of a class address. So these are the things that you have to initialize it, right? So this address, in order to define an address, you need a page to define these properties. So that is something you can create one instance and then you can initialize with certain values after you initialize a page, after you create an object. Okay, so the class is, this is just a class definition. Okay, this is just a class definition. Similarly, in Pega also, we'll create certain properties inside a class and then you can create an object and that object named as page. So we create a page to store these values inside that. Okay, so we need a page to capture all the values of that particular class. Okay, so since it is an address, it has 4 variables. Similarly, for my recruitment class, I have so many variables, like first name is one variable property, last name, date of birth, email, currency, expected salary, okay, address. So all of these details I need to store somewhere. Okay, so that is something, I have a page called py work page. So Pega is giving a standard page called py work page. So py work page is the standard page to verify the properties of a case. So whenever you are creating a case, okay, so it is going to have a page called py work page, which is an object, which is the name of the object, where it will store all the values. Okay, where it will have all the values which you are defining inside a case, where you are taking the inputs. So whatever the inputs which are available, which are captured, so those will be stored in a object with a name called py work page. So this is a standard page always. So whenever you open a case, this page you search with in the clipboard. So in the clipboard, if you search for the py work page, you can see the variables which are there inside that. Okay, so here under the page called py work page, you can see this page is an instance of the class recruitment. Okay, so this is the class, the recruitment class, which the py work page is an instance of this particular class. Okay, so under this py work page, you have the properties that you are defined it. So you can see date of birth, currency name, okay, expected salary, first name, last name, you can see over here. Okay, so all these values, the values which you are entering, so if it is available in the clipboard, it is saved automatically in the database. Okay, so that's how you need to remember. So whenever you are entering the values, whenever it is you are clicking on continue, automatically the save is performed. So if you see here, the first name is blank here. Okay, but whereas the first name is coming as Raviraj here. So when it will be saved into the database, whenever you are continuing, automatically this is getting saved in the database. Okay, now if you refresh over here, you can see the first name appears over here. So the commit, the save is happening as and when you click on continue. So Pega is doing that save automatically when you are moving out from one assignment to the next assignment. Okay, so that is a auto commit feature. Okay, so as and when you are moving from one assignment to the next assignment, it is doing that auto commit, auto save. Okay, so the database will automatically saving those values which are taken in the previous screen. Okay, so that is a default behavior of a Pega. Pega is taking care of that save logics. So because of that itself, you can see when it was updated, you can see the less than a minute ago. Okay, so recruiter has updated less than a minute ago. Just now have updated, right? Because when I'm moving from here to here, it has updated. Okay, so that is basically calling the database automatically. Okay, so for now, let's understand from the clipboard. The clipboard will have a page called py work page under the user pages category. So there are different set of pages. Under this, you have the user pages. So under this user pages, you can expand. Okay, so you can see this collapsible and expandable option available. So where you expand this user pages, and you can see the page name called py work page. Okay, so here you are going to capture these values. So these are the ones which are straightforward, a single value properties. Okay, the single value property. Now let's say if I want to keep an object inside an object. Okay, so something like I want to have one more page, one more object created inside this, where I will capture only the address in a separate page. Okay, so I need to define a different page that belongs to some other class. Okay, so something like data dash address. So I'm going to define a page with a name called address. Okay, and this page I'm going to define with a class as well. Okay, so then I can utilize the properties which are available in this class. Okay, so in order to utilize the variables of a particular class, I need to define that object that belongs to that class. Then only I can utilize the variables, the properties which are created inside that class. Okay, so how you can utilize that in Pega, let's see now. Any questions before I move to that?
Nope. All good.
No.
No.
Okay, now I'm going to create a new property. So we have discussed about the properties of a single values, where you will take a single date time or a single first name, last name. All these are the single value properties. Okay, so here address page, let's take, it's already with the same name. So let's take create and open, and the property type I need to go with. So all these we already discussed, date time, decimal, double. Okay, true and false, all of these are the single value properties. Okay, so here you can see these are single value properties. Whereas if you go to a page, so you have something called a single page group and a page list. So first we'll discuss about the single page. So here, whenever you are selecting the type as single page, it is expecting us to provide the page definition. In this case, the page definition is nothing but the name of the class. Okay, so the class which is available where the properties can be pulled in. Okay, so from which class it has to use. So that class name we need to specify over here. So you can see there are list of all the classes which are there in Pega. Okay, so we can utilize them. Okay, or else we can create a separate classes as well. Okay, so in order to capture the data, so I have certain data classes as well. So we starts with the data dash. Okay, so I can use certain Pega provided classes as well. So this data dash address is one such class which Pega tool is providing me. Okay, so certain classes which are already available, I can utilize it. Okay, so let's use this data dash address class, so that I'm going to have a page created with the name called address page, and this page belongs to a class data dash address. So whatever the properties which are accessible in this class, so I can use those properties. Okay, so let's use these properties instead of we creating a new properties. Okay, so in order to consume these properties, I have to create a page, and then I can use the page in my section rule where I'm capturing the address related details. Let's say email is there. Okay, so I want to capture this email not in the single value property directly on the about page. I'm going to utilize it in a different page, which should be given again with a dot notation. So whenever you are referencing a property, you should always keep a dot. Okay, so you need to specify the name of the page property here. So here I'm specify this address page property which I have created just now. So it's not a single value property, it's a multi-variable property. So this is just an object. So when you have an object of type some class, okay, so you need to place again one more dot to refer a single value which is an email. Okay, so you can see here there are other values which are also available. Okay, so you can use the properties which are coming from the class data dash address, and also the properties which are coming from the data dash. Okay, so I can use this property like py email address. The value is getting stored in this property. Okay, so now I'm associating to a page called address page. So whenever you are referencing a page property, remember you need to give a dot, and then followed by you need to give one more dot to capture the exact property where you want to store it. Okay, so here I'm going to store this email ID in this way. Okay, similarly, let's take the pin code as well. Let's take, instead of this, dot address page dot py code. Okay. So what I'm doing is I have certain properties which are coming from Pega. How I am saying it is coming from Pega? Because it is having py. The properties which are created inside the Pega tool, those are always py properties, px properties, py properties, and pz properties. Okay, so Pega rules, all of the Pega rules are which are provided by the platform. So those will always starts with the px, py, and pz. That is a specific notation which is specific to the Pega itself. If you want to create a new property which starts with py, it doesn't allow you, system doesn't allow you to create. Okay, so this is a standard notation which is exceptional case where Pega team will only create any of the platform team related things. Okay, so only platform related rules which are created, that will only start with py. All right, now click on submit.
Uh, Ravi, Baji here. I have one quick question. So, what is the
Yeah, Baj.
difference between PX, and PZ?
Yeah, so px, py, and pz. So basically the notation which is given. So px and py. So once let's see the px properties. So px properties are the ones which Pega will initiate. So it is something like Pega will define certain properties. Pega will initialize those properties. Something like you have the create date time. So who has created it? The case who has created it. Okay, and who has created? So create operator. Okay, so the person who has created it, so that property is called as px create date time, px create operator. So who is created and who has updated. So those are certain properties which are Pega will initialize. Pega will take care of initializing those things. Okay, so px update date time, okay, px update operator. So these are certain standard properties which Pega will take care of to save it automatically. Okay, so we doesn't need to explicitly use it. Okay, so this px properties that you see, these are the ones which you see here, created, updated. So you doesn't have an authority to update these things. So the px properties will be taken care by Pega system itself. It will be taking care of updating these values. Whereas if you see the status, you have an option to update the status. Okay, so this is also a Pega provided property, but this property is something you can update it. You have an option to update the status of from new to open and pending. Okay, so the status is something you have an option to update it. Okay, similarly the priority also, it is in your hands where you can update it. So certain properties which you have an access, a developer has an access to update, so those are the properties which we will use it for py purpose. So the ones which you are using right now in our sections, those are all of them are py properties. So you can see the email address that we have used it, this is starts with py. So the input that you are taking, you have an authority to add your inputs. So you can consume the inputs. So you always use it, the py properties. Okay, so whenever you're taking the inputs, you can utilize only the py properties. Okay, so py properties are the ones which you can take a input. So okay, so developers can use these properties to capture the inputs. You have the option to edit these py property values. Okay, so the properties which are created, which starts with py, so those properties you have a complete authority to update however you want to. Px properties, you doesn't have an option to update it, it is taken care by system. Okay, so similarly like when it was saved, px save date time. Okay, so when it was committed, px commit date time. So these are the standard properties which are starts with px. Okay, so I can show you in the clipboard as well. You can see certain px properties here. So px commit date time, px create date time, px create operator. So who has created it? Okay, so px create op name. Okay, which stage he is in, px current stage label. Okay, so he is in the initiation stage. Okay, similarly you can see px save date time, px update date time, px update operator. So some of these properties are automatically taken care by Pega itself. Okay, whereas you have this option to edit the ones which are py. Okay, so you can even edit from the clipboard as well. So you can see the values that you are eligible to update are the ones which are py properties. You have an option to edit. Okay, so you can see this editing of values can happen only for the py, not even for pz. So pz, again you can see this is very exceptional case which is always unique. So pz properties are the ones which are reserved for the production purpose. No one will update. Once initialized, that's it. Okay, so no one can update it. Even so, system won't be doing the updations for the pz properties. Okay, so it's the exceptional pz properties are. Okay, so this is only for the production purpose. Okay, so the values which are stored in, which are available inside the pz properties, those are which are very special case. Those are not used for anywhere. Okay, you cannot edit it, you cannot utilize it anywhere. Okay, these are something like unique values. Always pz values are unique values which are very exceptional case where you doesn't have, even system doesn't update those properties. px properties, and these are not supposed to be exposed, especially. Okay, not supposed for exposing. Okay, so pz properties are not going to appear anywhere on the screen. Okay, so on the screen that you see, the properties that you see over here, here, nowhere the PZ properties will be exposed. So PZ properties are not supposed to expose anywhere. PY can be, PX can be, but PZ cannot be exposed. Okay, so basically it's a security provided rule, properties as well. Okay, so PZ is very secured provided rules, those are. All right, so for now this way you understand it. Okay, so PY is reserved for the developers can use these properties to edit. PX not a developer usage, it is for the system driven, the system can use it. PZ properties are the production purpose and none can update, and once initialized it is the unique, not supposed for exposing those values in the front end in the UI. All right, so now that I have initialized these two properties, okay, PY postal code as well as the PY email address, let's see how it gets saved when you are having a page property. Okay, now I'm coming back again. So this time I'm going to store this email and pin code as well. Okay, I'm just adding some value and clicking on continue. Now you can see on the clipboard the page called address page. So now you need to see this PY work page, and inside this PY work page, this address page will be available. Okay, so here the page, if in case you are looking for a page inside a page, you need to click on this collapsible icon. So expand icon. Okay, so click on this expand icon where you can see the page appears over here. So the page is of type class data dash address. You can see here under the PY work page, there is a page created called address page where these two values are stored. PY postal code and PY email address is stored in this. Okay, so these two values, PY email address and PY postal code, are available in a page called address page. Okay, and this way, whenever we are creating a page property inside a work class, inside a recruitment class, so that page properties you will see after you expand this PY work page. Okay, inside that you will see the pages that are utilized in the for the display purpose. Okay, so whatever the pages that you create, so those appears once you expand the PY work page. Okay, so in this way you can create different pages and you can see the values which are defined inside a page. Okay, so the page you can create the page, and each and every page comprises of those properties which the properties that are belonging to the class, the one which it is created, the page which is created for which class definition, so only those properties can be created inside it. All right, are we good?
Yep, that's all good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So now in the similar fashion, you have something called as page list. It's a collection of pages. Okay. So you can define a collection of pages. It's of same type, but you can maintain a collection of pages. Okay. So a collection of pages is of type, it could be of type a list. Okay, so this list will be belonging to a list of pages. Each and every page is an independent page of different or same class. Okay, of the same class you may have multiple pages. Okay, so let's say if I have to capture two addresses, one for office address and one for home address, I can define a page list property called address list. Okay, I can have multiple pages inside it. So first page will represent one address. Okay, so the each and every list which will be denoted in a index based notation coming in the brackets. Okay, so address list of 1 represents the first address and address list of 2 represents the second address. Similarly, you can include multiple addresses as well. Okay, so you can include multiple addresses, and each and every address that you include, it's a page. Okay, so that page will comprises of certain properties inside it. Okay, so each and every page is an independent page. So address list of 1 is one page, address list of 2 is a separate page. So each and every address list, each and every address page will have those all the properties which are mentioned. Okay, so all the property values will be called out inside each and every page. Okay, so that is just a collection. You are maintaining a collection. Okay, so that collection of pages can be created as well. Okay, so let's see how this page list can be worked upon. So you can create a page list property first of all. So let's create inside the recruitment class, create property, and now I'm specifying address list, and you can click on create and open. And before clicking on save, you just need to change the property type as page list. Okay, and this requires a class. The list of pages belongs to which class? So that is something you can define. Okay, so right now I'm defining the data dash address and saving this one. Okay, so this is a page list which I have created. Now I need to take a list. Okay, so whenever I'm taking the inputs, it's a list of inputs. Okay, it's not a single input. Okay, so now in order to take multiple inputs, okay, multiple page inputs, so you can use something like repeating table. Okay, so you can use something like repeating dynamic layout, or you can use the table or hierarchical table. Okay, so basically you can use a simple layout called table layout. So I'm going to use this table layout, okay, where I'm going to capture multiple addresses. Okay, so in this table I'm going to capture the inputs in the format of a table. Okay, so where I can take the multiple addresses in the table structure. So here you can have an option to click on this view properties icon. Okay, so once you select a table, you have this view properties icon where you can see the layout properties pop-up window appears. Okay, so here whenever you are using the table, under the data source you have the option to specify different sources, just like you have seen for a drop down. Here also, whenever you are having a list, okay, so table is basically to display the list of values inside a table, right? So the table is not something like Excel where you will have certain records inside. Each and every record will be displayed one after another. Okay, so that is something, the list of records that you can define in a property. If you are selecting a property type, you certainly need to provide this list or a group. Okay, we'll come back to the group later, but list is something we have already created, so we can specify the address list here. Okay, so the property which I need to use here is, it should be certainly a list. Okay, so it should be a collection of pages. So that collection of pages which I have created, the property is address list. Okay, so once I have selected this address list, now the purpose of this table is to take the inputs, right? So for that, what I need to do is, under the operations tab, you need to say that this is allowed for editing. So the row editing is possible with this. So you have these options called inline. If you select as none, it is not allow you to edit it. So for that, you need to go for the row editing option as inline and select one of these two options. If you click on that row, then only it will allow you to edit, or always you want to make it as editable. So you can try either of these two options. Okay, so I'm going to go with this rows always editable. All right, and now click on submit. So what happens is, I have a table created with a source as address list, and as and when I specify the address list source, it is taking me to the class data dash address. So the list of addresses which I have to enter, it should be of the class data dash address. I can use the properties inside this table which belongs to the class data dash address. I can use only those properties which are created in the class data dash address. All right, so here I can use certain inputs where you have the cells, two cells, one is header cell, one is the value cell. Okay, so header cell represents the table header. Okay, so whatever the header that you are going to take the input, let's say I want to take the data display here. By default, this is just a text to understand what kind of input that you have to take it. So for that, I'm just taking a simple text, or I can say this is a label, right? So this is not a text, this is just a label. Okay, so I can take a label. Where is that label? Text. Change. Second. Delete it. Simply by default, it is a label only. Okay, so by default, if you open it, it can be given some value without a property. Let's say here it is address, street, okay, and sorry, let me add few columns here by using this option. Like you have the option to add the columns, insert column after the current cell which is selected, or the insert column before with the current selected. Okay, so I can add certain columns in this way. Let's delete this particular thing. I'm going to delete the column completely by using this option, delete selected column. Okay, so here I can specify the labels. Okay, so you can see the label is coming by default. So here I can specify the value of this label as street. Okay, so this is just a header. Okay, so street and city, state, okay, and pin code, or say postal. Okay, so this way I'm just giving the headers here. Okay, and inside this I can take certain properties. Okay, I can drag and drop certain input properties. So that the data capture properties which I'm going to take is, one is city, street, state, and postal code. Okay, so I can use the properties here. So as in when I'm taking the data capture inputs, text input, I'm dragging and dropping into it, so I can utilize the property names, which is dot. When I'm keeping dot here, so automatically it is showing me the properties of the data dash address. Why? The reason is the table is already configured here, so you can see the address list is already given as a source. Okay, so once you have given a source for this, so it will automatically allow me to use the properties of this class data dash address. So I hope you are seeing my cursor. So whenever we are defining the table of type a page list, okay, and that page list belongs to the class which you have seen here. Okay, so I can use the properties inside this table layout of belonging to that class data dash address. Okay, so I can use something like py dot py street. Street is not there. Okay, I'm trying to use this properties which are existing. Let's say py email address itself, or country name, city, city set. Okay, which are there, I'm going to use only those two. Let's delete this column. Let's take city. So I'm changing this control to text input, and let's take this py city. All right, and Let's take the state. And I can use the control as text input. Okay, and postal code. Okay, so I'm taking these three inputs from this list. Okay, so whatever the page, each and every record is a page, and this page getting stored in this address list. Okay, so this page list will save these values. So by default, you see add item and delete options are appearing for me. Okay, so in the table, we have this option to configure whenever you need to include this add and delete options. You have these options like displaying the grid header. Okay, so in the header, by default, it is coming with this add item and delete item. Okay, so if you doesn't want this action bottom and the action top, you can select appropriately. So in this case, I'm removing this action bottom. Okay, so you can see here this action bottom, I'm removing it by selecting this display grid footer. Okay, so you can see the grid header is all automatically coming with this add item and delete options. So that's what it is mentioned in this. Okay, now click on submit. So you can see the footer is not coming now, only the header is coming. Okay, so this way we can customize the table with those things which are appearing. Okay, so if you want to remove this and you want to keep it below, you can select it and you can just drag and drop wherever you want. Okay, so let's say if I want these to be appearing somewhere on the right hand side, it comes over here. Okay, so this way you can update where you want to include it. Let's see, cancel, save it. It should be there ideally. Okay, let's see from the case creation point of view. Click on back. No, it is not coming here. Okay. Okay, what happened? Okay, some issue is happening here. Ideally, you should paste these things. Okay, as I mentioned, rows always editable, but still I need to click on that icon. It should be allowing me to drag and drop from here to there. But, okay, anyway, let's see here once again, address list. It's was always editable. Submit. You can copy and just paste in the cells. You can use Control C and Control V as well. Control V for paste, Control C for copy. Okay, that's it. Okay, so now you can see this. Continue, come back again. All right, so here, whenever you are adding a new item, it is going to add a new record in the background. So this is basically a list where it is going to include you the each and every record in that page list. Okay, so it is created a page for you where it is going to it is asking you to enter this particular address. Okay, so you can capture multiple addresses in this way. So how many records are created? So in the background, you can see 4 records will be created for you. Okay, so here, whenever you come back to the screen, the case where you can see the PY work page, once you expand it, you can see the page list appears over here. So it's a collection. So you can see the symbol here represents, it is basically having the collection of pages. So you can see this symbol, whereas this is single page. Okay, so that it is something giving us, it has multiple pages inside it. Once you expand it, you can see the other pages appears over here. Okay, so once you have multiple addresses and you click on continue, it will be automatically saved. Now you can refresh it and see you will have 4 instances created for you. So you can see address list of 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 pages are created in the background. Of course, it doesn't have the data, but it has created the 4 instances for you. Okay, so who has created this? You can see that information which is captured as part of PX properties. Okay, so now if you go back and add the values, so it will comprise of the 4 pages which is captured. Okay, so let's say this is Hyderabad address, and okay, so something cool, and similarly I can add the city. Okay. Okay, so here I'm just deleting the other 2 records, so it can delete the other 2 records. Now if I click on continue, so now you can, maybe it is looking for some kind of validations which is triggered in the background. Okay, so for now let's take this empty, click on continue. Okay, now you can come back and refresh once again to see those 2 pages appears under this. So I can see address list of 1 with certain details which are added. Okay, and similarly address list of 2 comprises of the other 2 details. All right, so in this way, we have the collection of pages where you can add each and every page comprises of certain details. Okay, so that page of information you can see under this collection. Once you expand it, you can see that collection. Okay, so this page list will have the indexes with 1, 2, 3 in this notation. So it keeps incrementing the indexes one after another. Okay, so it keeps on adding each and every page by incrementing the index. Okay, so if you add one more address, it will come to address list of 3. So just like the collection that we have in Java. Okay, so it's array list. Okay, so where it is taking the list incremented by the index notation. All right, any questions here?
No, that makes sense. Yeah.
No. Yep, all clear.
Okay, so coming to the another page property, which is address group. Okay, so I can create the property from here as well by clicking on. So as and when whenever you are in that particular rule form, you can create that, but the same property type you can create. Okay, so I can create the property rule when I go for actions and create as well. So I can use this option as well to create this property. So create a address group. Okay, and here instead of going to create and then opening the change type, you have some additional configuration options available here as well, where you can select the different type of properties. Okay, so this is applicable for only single value property, but let's go to that place itself. Okay, so that is a faster way of creating the single value properties. If you can use that option, that is applicable only for the single value properties. But in case of a page properties, you need to go and come to the screen where you need to define the page, single page or a page list or a page group. Okay, so you can define the page group. This format will change in a different way. The way of storage is something different. So both are same, page list is same, page group is also same. Both are collections. Okay, so something you can compare with a map in Java. Okay, so it's a key value pair. It's having a key and that values will be stored in a page group. Okay, so the page group will also require the collection. It's also a collection, but it requires a key. Whenever it is trying to add a record, it is certainly expecting us to provide certain key value. So key is expected from us. Okay, so that is something whenever you try to include it, it will expect us to provide that key. Okay, so now this property type page group, when I have created it, and now if I go back to my section, the same scenario which I have used the page list, now I'm updating it to the page group. So here you have the option to use list as well as the group. Okay, so here if I use this group option, okay, you have something called as column sorting. Okay, by default when you are entering the values, okay, so it can have an option to do the sorting as well. So let's say if I want to do the sorting, it is automatically doing the sorting as well. So you can see on click of this label, automatically the sorting is happening. Okay, so this sorting is something applicable only for the page list, not for the page groups. So page groups doesn't allow you to do the sorting. Okay, so this option should be removed in case if you are using the page groups. Okay, so you have to remove this sorting. So sorting is applicable only for the page list. So it will automatically do the sorting for the values which are entered, which are available. So the records will be sorted. Okay, so based on the alphabetical order. Now I have updated to page group. Now you can see the difference between these two. So let's refresh once. So now if I'm going to add a new item, it is expecting me some input. So this is basically
This conference will now be recorded.
So this particular input which you are providing, this is a key for a record that you are storing. So each and every item will have a specific unique key to identify the particular record of information. Okay, so whenever you are using a page group, it requires an input which will store the index in the format of a string notation. Okay, so let's say office. Okay, so this city which I'm specifying, it is going to capture the city. Something is wrong. I have removed this. That is that operations. The rows always. Let's try. Let's click rotate it. So let's. It's not refreshing. Something is stopping here. So ideally what happens is it is going to store the values. It's going to create the pages for you with the input which is provided there. Okay, so address of home, the values will be stored, and address of office in this way. So the key is expected as an input. Okay, so the key which you are given here, Okay, as in when you click on this add item, the input which you are providing, this becomes the subscript for your page group. Okay, so address group of home, address group of office. So in this way, it will maintain in the background. In the clipboard, this is how it will store it. Okay, so instead of straight away incrementing the index, this is how it works in case of page group. Okay, so I'm not sure why it is not working now, but let's see, maybe it's also time off. All right, so we'll see this demonstration tomorrow for the page group, and we'll go towards the other aspects. Any questions?
Yeah,
Not
Ravi.
from
No,
me.
yeah, I look forward to it working. Yeah.
Okay, just practice it, and if you have any questions, then we can